Can't believe it, Fran. 1 week away from our trip to beautiful Indianapolis, Indiana, the site of the 2019 NFL Scouting Combine. Welcome to the Journey to the Draft podcast. I'm Chris McPherson, joined alongside by the aforementioned Fran Duffy. And Fran, it's go time.
It's your home away from home.
It is my home. I spend more time
Indy.
in Indianapolis than any other place outside of Philadelphia and the surrounding region. So
yeah, that's your baby.
It is. I'm excited. Can't wait to do it.
It's a great trip every year.
It's a fun time and just so much great content that we're going to be getting for fans out there. We're going to hear from head coach Doug Pearson. We're going to hear from Howie Roseman while we're out there from an Eagles standpoint. We're going to get a chance to interview the top draft prospects. We're going to be down there watching the workouts up close and in person. We're going to be delivering podcasts every day from Indianapolis. So we've got a lot coming your way.
It's a lot of fun. So we'll have the preview pieces that I've been writing have been going up every single day. So the offense was all last week. The defense, we're in the middle of it today, or this week rather. So you'll have plenty to read up on before the drills get going here in just over a week. But it's coming. It's coming fast.
All right, so we're doing things a little different this week. We're not going to have a Mr. Relevant. We're going to have an expanded draft buzz with Tony Pauline from draftanalyst.com, kind of going position by position, previewing the combine. Our pick six is going to be 6 players we're most excited to see work out in Indianapolis. We're going to do something a bit different. We're going to have our unofficial visit, and that's going to be New Mexico State linebacker Terrell Hanks. We'll have your questions in our draft mailbag, of course. We're going to bring back a classic.
It's an oldie, but a goodie.
On the clock.
It's back.
I'm going to put Fran on the clock. I have 10 scenarios. 10 different props here, and he's going to give his take here.
I'm excited.
So we'll see how he does. Some stuff on the field, some stuff a little off kilter. So it's a little mix of everything.
All right,
there.
I'm excited for it. I have no idea what's
I have a second piece of paper that I've been trying to make sure that stays hidden this whole time, so you can't see the questions. I gave him a couple things to kind of brush up on, so he's not completely blindsided. Yeah. All right, but But there's a couple things.
I've got a couple notes, but I'll be ready.
I want some. I do want to throw a couple curveballs at and see how you react.
Yep.
So, all right, let's get this party started. Let's go into Draft Buzz with Tony Pauline.
Now it's time for Draft Buzz.
All right, back for another edition of Draft Buzz. None other than the man from DraftAnalyst.com himself, Tony Pauline. Again, you can follow him on Twitter at Tony Pauline. And Tony, this is going to be a bit of a different episode, a bit of a different Draft Buzz because we are 1 week out from the NFL Scouting Combine. We get to see these underclassmen up close and personal. So many storylines to delve into. We figure, why don't we go position by position, kind of hit on a few key topics at each spot, and if there's a place or two where you want to kind of go long-winded, you have the room to do so.
Sounds good, and I have a tendency to go long-winded, although people usually can't understand what I'm saying, but let's give it a whirl.
All right, we'll start at the quarterback position. All right, Mel Kiper came out with his second version of his mock draft, and we've talked a lot in recent weeks about Kyler Murray from Oklahoma, where he's going to go, and Kiper has him being mocked number 13 overall to the Miami Dolphins. Do you think that's about the range where he'll go?
I think he'd go anywhere from 7 to 20. I have him 15 to the Washington Redskins. Miami Dolphins just hired a defensive-minded head coach. I don't know that he's going to want to select Kyle Murray. I don't believe for a second the Arizona Cardinals will take him at the top of the first pick of the draft. There's some talk that the Raiders are intrigued with Murray, but I also know that they like Dwayne Haskins. But at this point, I think it's just checking the boxes to see if they can get an upgrade over Derek Carr versus actually looking for Carr's replacement. So, depending on what goes on the next couple of months, I could see Kyle Murray going as early as 7. I could see him falling into the early 20s.
Tony, any word on how many of these top quarterbacks will or won't throw at the Combine? I know that's been a storyline over the last few years, and every year going into the Combine is which guys will throw, which guys won't. We had a stretch where a lot of the top signal callers backed out and didn't throw, but it seems like the momentum has kind of gone the other way now. We're seeing a lot of the top guys decide to participate. Has there been any buzz either way going into this event?
Yeah, and why not? Because if you don't have a good throwing session at the Combine, you still have your pro day to fall back on. If you throw well at the Combine, you really don't have to do too much at the pro day. But if you skip the Combine and then you don't throw well at your pro day, you're in trouble. Other than Murray, who's kind of on the fence as to whether or not he's going to throw at the Combine, I've not heard any of the QBs who are saying they won't throw at the Combine. I've not gotten that sort of that feeling that any of them won't. Well, I guess we'll find out in the next couple of days.
All right, let's go to running back on NFL.com. Lance Zierlein and Daniel Jeremiah, they did an exercise where they went through every team and picked a player that each team should pay close attention to at the scouting combine. And their selection for the Eagles was a running back, an Alabama back, and not Josh Jacobs, who some people are mocking to the Eagles at number 25, but Damien Harris. Your thoughts on Damien Harris?
You know, I think he'd be a good fit for the Eagles. He's a bigger guy who can pound it down the middle, and they like that type of ball carrier. He's not a true perimeter runner. He's not going to get around the edge, but that's okay. He's a solid pass catcher out of the backfield. He's also a very good blocker. He's a much better blocker than Josh Jacobs, which I think at this point that's something the Eagles want. I could see all the Eagles also looking at, in that capacity as far as a player that they should pay close attention to. Tremont Jones is a name, as is Cody Ford, someone that Fran and I talked about, I believe, back in November. An intriguing guy who can potentially play right tackle, can play guard. So I think if Ford is a guy that they're looking at, it's probably more of a trade down a few slots rather than take him at the end of round one.
Tony, who's the running back that everybody's going to be talking about when we leave Indy? We know that somebody's going to run the really good 40. Someone's going to have the great overall workout. Who is it that everybody will be talking about when we're leaving the combine?
I'm going to give you three names. First, Mike Weber of Ohio State, a guy that, I've been on for 2 years now. I think he's going to test much better than anyone expects. And I think people are going to be buzzing about both running backs from the University of Memphis, Tony Pollard and Darrell Henderson. I think Pollard's going to turn in a blistering 40. I think Henderson's going to have not only turn in a good 40, but he's going to turn in some good shuttle times and really do well in the drills. A lot of people very excited about Henderson.
All right, moving on to wide receiver. A bit of big news broke on Monday, Tony. Marquise Brown from Oklahoma. It was revealed he will not take part in the combine after undergoing surgery to repair Fran's ex-girlfriend, Liz Frank. He suffered the injury in the Big 12 championship game. He did play through the national semifinal loss to Alabama. He's still being mocked in terms of going to the first round. Mel Kiper has him going 12th to the Packers. How do you think the injury and not taking part in the combine and his pro day as well will impact his draft stock?
Well, it's going to hurt a bit because, when a guy's that small, you want to know what he runs. Now, on film, he's a blazer. He's a guy who consistently gets downfield, and opponents can't stay with him. I don't think he's a Packers type of receiver. Right now, I think good spots for him would be number 20 to the Pittsburgh Steelers, who look like they're going to part ways with Antonio Brown, or number 22 to the receiver star Baltimore Ravens.
Tony, I think it'll be interesting just because with Brown, I think a lot of people had him penciled in before this injury, before the news that, mid to late first round. Oh, could he fall now to the second? I think it's much more likely now that we're talking about him as more of a lock for that end part of round one, like you're saying, in the 20s. I think there was a chance that he would have gone much earlier had he run, but I agree with you. I think you're still looking at him in the 20s. Well, Tony, we've talked a lot as well about these bigger receivers, guys like Nikhil Harry and Kelvin Harmon and A.J. Brown and guys like that. And I know you've got some news about Nikhil Harry, the wide receiver from Arizona State, and how he's looked so far during his pre-combine workouts.
The news is not good. I'm told that Harry was very reluctant to run 40 times during training. When they ran the 40 times, he wouldn't show up. I'm told that his vertical jumps have been between 27 to 30 inches. And he basically, I believe a week and a half ago, switched trainers and went to entirely different training facility. So right there, those are some red flags. And with a guy like Nikhil Harry, as we talked about, he's a bigger guy who's got to show that he can do more than just win out for the contested passes, for the 50-50 throws. So as we get into the combine, when the receivers take the field on Saturday, three things could happen with Harry, and two of them are bad. Number one, he runs and he doesn't run well. Not running well means slower than 4.55. Number two, he doesn't run at all, which is going to be a big red flag. Or three, he runs and he runs a reasonably good time, which is 4.52 or below. But right now, I'm not hearing good things as far as Harry's concerned in his combine training. I hear it's a bit scattered. It's a bit all over the place. We'll have to wait and see what happens a week from Saturday.
Tony, looking at the offensive linemen, who do you think has the most to prove in Indianapolis? It was a great showing at the Senior Bowl in Mobile a few weeks ago, but with all the underclassmen coming into the mix, who do you think has the most to prove there in Indianapolis, whether it's on the field or in the medicals or with the team interviews?
There's a couple of guys, but I think the one who's going to surprise the most is going to be Titus Howard from Alabama State, who was very good at the Senior Bowl. He's very athletic. He probably moves better than any of the offensive linemen who will be on hand at the combine. So I think Titus Howard, with a good athletic workout, a decent 40 time, and again, with decent 40 time, you're looking at somewhere in the 5 flat range with a good 10 time. Decent shuttle times, because those shuttle times in a 3-cone will tell you, if you can use them in a pure zone blocking system. I would expect Howard to really do well in all the athletic tests. Sure, he's going to interview reasonably well and come out of the combine with higher draft grades than when he went in.
Tony, how high do you think he can go?
I have him right now as a second rounder, as a late second rounder. The question is, does a team believe he can play left tackle at the next level? Because if a team believes, we can stick this guy and we can play him at left tackle, I think he can go top 45. If they say no, he's a right tackle or a guard, it's going to be a bit depressed. So it depends again, how he looks in drills and how he times in the shuttles and as well as the 3-cone, how he moves. And I would expect some good things, because one thing about this guy is he's very athletic.
Going to the edge rushers, you've actually been all over this story from the jump, and you can read more at draftanalyst.com. Louisiana Tech's Jalen Ferguson, along with Mississippi State's Jeffrey Simmons and Colorado State wide receiver Preston Williams, they've been offered modified invitations, which includes a participation in medical exams as well as the team interviews. Why do you think the NFL has kind of changed its stance, or whether it's the NFL or the National Scouting Combine, the people running that have changed their tune with allowing these players to come to Indianapolis after they were initially had their invitations rescinded because of previous off-field incidents?
Yeah, well, combine officials who are also made up of NFL general managers and some people from the NFLPA, I think they found themselves in a jam after taking back Ferguson's invitation. I mean, the incident in question for Jalen Ferguson happened more than 4.5 years ago. And the incident was basically expunged from from the legal system, and he has no criminal record. So if you're looking back on situations where a guy doesn't have a criminal record for an incident that happened 4.5 years ago, and you're going to take away his combine invitation, well, you know what? There's going to be a lot of people on that list. I know of other people who are still invited to do the entire workout that have done things that are much worse and have criminal records as compared to Jalen Ferguson. So I think they found themselves in a jam when they pulled the invitation on Ferguson, and they had to kind of reverse course. One team I spoke with, who told me they were very interested in Jeffrey Simmons, and this was before his injury, they said they wanted Simmons at the combine because they want to ask him the tough questions. They want to make him feel uncomfortable, or they want to ask him the uncomfortable questions about his prior incident to see how he would react, so they could draw their own conclusions as to whether or not it was a one-time incident for Simmons, which it seems to be, or whether it could be an issue moving forward. So you're not only penalizing the player, you're penalizing the team. The bottom line is, this is the end result of the combine being commercialized and being turned from what was a closed scouting event into a marketable 4-day spectacle for the league. And I think the bottom line is I understand what the combine is doing, and I agree with them to an extent, but they have to lay out written rules as to what they will and what they won't accept, and those rules have to be applied equally to everyone. Because going back to Ferguson, what's going to happen is, and I said this on my own podcast, as we get closer to the combine and even after the combine, you're going to hear about some of the prior incidents from players who were at the combine, and people are going to ask questions as to, well, why was he there working out? But they pulled the invitation on Jalen Ferguson, who got into a fight 4.5 years before the combine, before his combine even started.
Tony, is there an edge rusher that kind of piques your interest going into this event as somebody that you expect to test really, really well that maybe not enough people are talking about right now?
Well, number one, I think Cleveland Ferrell is very much underrated by people. I think Landis Durham of Texas A&M, I would expect some outstanding workout times and some testing results from him. Durham's kind of fallen off. I mean, entering the season, he was given a potential top 45 grade by scouts. Didn't have the season he expected. If you watch the film, he's good out of a three-point stance as well as standing over tackle. So that's another guy I would expect to after the combine leave the combine with a higher grade than when he went in.
All right, going to the interior defensive lineman here, Tony. Quinton Williams from Alabama is your number one overall prospect. Do you think that he'll be headed to Arizona with that number 1 overall pick, especially since there are rumblings that Robert Nkemdiche, the former first-round pick out of Ole Miss, could be on the cutting block?
I think it's I think it's absolutely a possibility. Williams is a good player now who's got tremendous upside. I expect an outstanding combine workout for him. I know he's very excited about it. I've been told that Nkemdiche is likely to be released with an injury settlement. Suffered an injury late in 2018, isn't even going to take the field. And even before the injury, he was very disappointing for the Cardinals, and they're not very high on him. So I think it fits well with cutting Nkemdiche via an injury settlement and then bringing in Williams as the number 1 pick of the draft.
What is it about Williams that has him stand out more than, say, Josh Allen or Nick Bosa in this draft class?
He's more of a 3-down player. I mean, Josh Allen, people are looking at him as an edge rusher, which I don't see on film. And I'd like to get Fran's take on this, because when I watch Josh Allen on film, can he rush the edge? Yes. But he also gets wiped out at the point of attack on running downs. He's a guy who's got to beat opponents with an inside move or with his hands, because he's not stout at the point. Doesn't mean he's not a good player. I think he's going to be a terrific 3-4 outside linebacker that can stand up as well as play in space. As far as Nick Bosa, I think Williams is much more explosive on the inside as an interior pass rusher, as a guy who holds up against the run. Bosa is probably a better pure pass rusher, but I think Williams is more of a 3-down player against the run and the pass.
I agree with you, Tony. I think when you look at Joey Bosa, or Nick Bosa, excuse me, I think you look at him as a different tier than Josh Allen. And I think with Allen, I agree with you. To me, and this is just my opinion, there are way too many snaps where he's getting blocked one-on-one, sometimes by tight ends, and not getting past them, not getting to the quarterback, not getting to the ball carrier. It's just something that was a consistent issue. You watch him against Georgia, and there was something that showed up time and time and time again. I know he was really productive this year. I know that the athleticism is there. I know that, he's only been playing, off the edge full-time for a few years now. He's a high school wide receiver who made that switch over to defense full-time. But I agree with you. I am surprised to see that it's still at this point in the process we're talking about Josh Allen as a top 3, top 5 player. Although that being said, you talk to people around the league, and I know you do obviously as well. You talk to people, and it's like some people are just in love with Josh Allen. It's like, yeah, like he should be a top 3 pick. He should be a top 3 pick. But you talk to others, and they'll bring up some of the same concerns that you and I have. So he's definitely a polarizing player in this process.
Situation is the teams at the top basically play a 4-man line, and I just don't think that Josh Allen is a hand in the ground 4-man line type of player. I think he's going to be a very good player, but I think he's a scheme specific player in that he has to stand over tackle in a 3-4 type of system where he can be used as a pass rusher up the field, where he can be dropped off the line, can be used in space, maybe occasionally come out of a 3-point stance. But if you put him in a 3-point stance in a 4-man line, there's just too many times that while he'll be a good pass rusher, he's going to be a liability defending the run.
All right, Tony, going to off-the-ball linebackers, Rob Rank from NFL Draft Scout wrote this about LSU linebacker Devon White, saying, with all due respect to Roquan Smith, the 2017 Butkus Award winner and 8th overall pick last spring to the Chicago Bears, Devon White was arguably the top linebacker in college football each of the past 2 seasons. What's your evaluation of Devon White to this point?
Well, I still like Roquan Smith slightly better, although I'm not going to take anything away from him. I have White right now in my mock draft going number 11 to the Cincinnati Bengals. I don't think he's going to go much higher than that. He's basically what the league wants in a linebacker these days. Slightly undersized, but explosive, very fast, can get from point A to point B quickly to make the plays. Guys like Devon White in the past were looked at as traditional weak side linebackers. Same thing with Roquan Smith. But you stick them on the inside, you let them run to the ball, they get to the action quickly, and they make the play, and that's what teams want. We're not going to nitpick. I don't have Devon White as a top 10 pick right now. I think in large part because there's so much talent on the defensive line, because you've got his teammate Greedy Williams there, and you're going to have at least 1, if not 2 quarterbacks there. As opposed to last year when we had 4 quarterbacks. I don't have Devon White as a top 10 pick, but I think they're similar type players.
I think everybody kind of has Devon White as the number one linebacker, and it seems like everybody's in consensus that number 2 and number 3 are Devin Bush from Michigan, Mack Wilson from Alabama in some order. My question for you, Tony, is from the people that you've talked to, your sources around the league in terms of talking with scouts and people that work with NFL teams, how do most people have those two stacked?
Everyone I've spoken to has Mack Wilson way ahead of Devin Bush, and it's not even close. I mean, Devin Bush is a very good run defender. He stacks well against the run better than Mack Wilson. But Mack Wilson is much more of a three-down defender. You know, Devin Bush is a liability in pass coverage where Mack Wilson isn't. Devin Bush is a bit of a liability dropping back into space and in pursuit. Mack Wilson isn't. So I think Mack Wilson's athleticism and especially his versatility to be kept on the field on 3rd and 5 in coverage situations or even defend the run or blitz up the field puts him ahead of Devin Bush from people I speak to. And I got to tell you, I agree with that.
All right, let's go to the defensive backs. First, the cornerback position in particular, Tony. Is there a certain prospect, a person in particular you're looking forward to seeing on the turf there in Indianapolis?
Hang on a second. You're going off the script here.
My bad, Tone. Yeah.
All right. Ask again.
Okay. Here we go. 5, 4, 3, 2. All right, Tony, transitioning to the defensive backfield. Let's start with the cornerback position. Is there a prospect in particular you're looking forward to seeing light up the turf in Indianapolis?
Jamal Peters of Mississippi State, a guy who came into the season with a top 100 grade. I still have him graded as a third rounder. A lot of people think he's a last day pick. 6'1.5", goes between 210, 215 pounds, runs and plays in the mid 4.4s. If you watch him on film, he beats down opponents to defend the pass, but he's also got solid ball skills. Was supposed to play in the Shrine game, but he's a little banged up. We'll see if he runs at the Combine because I'm told that leg has been a lingering issue for him. But if he's healthy, I'm really looking forward to watching him perform because he's one of those guys at the defensive and at cornerback that's over 6 foot tall and is very athletic. I really like his style of play. If he's not medically red flagged, I think he's going to go a lot earlier in the draft than people expect.
Tony, we've seen a lot of buzz on the Vanderbilt corner, Jajuan Williams, a big kid, over 6'1", to over 210 pounds. What have you heard from him in talking with NFL teams?
Yeah, and I'm told he's looked terrific in combine training. He's been very impressive. Yeah, over the summer, if you follow me, I gave him a top 75 grade based off of his sophomore film, and I haven't changed that. People like his length, they like his feistiness. He's got decent instincts. He's got decent ball skills. You really want to see his 40 time. And the 40 time will determine whether or not he's a top 50 selection. Is it a situation where he's not fast or he just loses in transition, turning to run with the opposing receivers or trying to get his head back? But he's got great versatility. He's the type of guy who can play corner. You can put him on the inside at safety if you want to. A guy who has got a huge amount of upside. I think the 40 time for him will determine where he ends up in the draft.
Tony, when we were at the Senior Bowl, you reported, I believe, that it was a shoulder injury that kept Mississippi State safety Jonathan Abram from participating. He did an interview with NFL Total Access on NFL Network and said that his combine numbers, quote, will blow people away. What have you seen during your evaluation to make you think that he's going to have an outstanding workout at Lucas Oil Stadium?
He's very explosive. I mean, a guy who's incredibly quick, closes with excellent speed. He shows some violence on the film. Obviously, you're not going to test that at the Combine. Decent range. The thing with Abram is let's see what he does in the long and short shuttle compared to the other safeties and compared to some of the cornerbacks. Let's see what he does in the 3-cone because his forte is not going sideline to sideline. He doesn't show great range in center field. But I could see him running a good 40 time with a good 10 split because he's got that great closing burst up the field on the blitz, defending the run, or even closing to the action.
Tony, last question for you in terms of these positional questions. Who's a safety that you think can really, really help themselves with a great athletic workout next week?
Juan Thornhill of Virginia. We know he's a good football player. We know he's got excellent instincts. We know he's a hard worker. but there are questions about his athleticism, his speed in both a straight line as well as laterally. What's his 40 time going to be? What's his shuttle time going to be? Right now, he's a third-round guy, a late third-round guy who could move into the top 70 selections with a good workout at the Combine.
And last but not least, we've talked about Mel Kiper's mock draft a little bit already, Tony, and every week on the podcast we do a mock draft roundup, so we'll do Kiper's. And for the Eagles at number 25, he has them taking a cornerback, Trayvon Mullen from Clemson. Your thoughts on that selection?
Big fan of Trayvon Mullen. Last summer I graded him as a potential first and second round choice, which is exactly where I have him now. He's got excellent size, he's got excellent length, he's got solid ball skills. At times, he's a little bit difficult to scout on film because opposing quarterbacks just didn't throw his way. He's got a good combination of physicality as well as ball skills. So I think that would be a good pick depending on who else was available to him. I think it would fit a need. I think he's an Eagles type of cornerback. I think he's a good player now that's got a terrific amount of upside.
Your thoughts, Fran?
I haven't studied him yet.
Okay.
Yeah. So the corners are last. They're going to be later this week.
Gotcha. So look forward to seeing that as well as the other position profiles and previews. If you haven't checked them out already on PhiladelphiaEagles.com and the Eagles app, the defensive tackle one just dropped a short time ago before recording this. So, Tony, 1 week away from Indianapolis. We'll see you out there, sir.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. As always, again, Tony Pauline from DraftAnalyst.com. You can follow him on Twitter at Tony Pauline. Up next, Pick Six players who we're most excited to see work out in Indianapolis.
Now it's time for Pick Six.
Great stuff as always from Tony. Can't wait to catch up with him out there in Indianapolis. Again, DraftAnalyst.com, one of the best in the business from an insider standpoint, always has great insight and info, and he's going to get tons of it while he's out there in Indianapolis. So definitely make sure to follow him on Twitter and keep listening for more updates here on the Journey to Draft podcast. But up next here, Pick Six players we're most excited to see work out in Indianapolis. I'll let you have the honors, Fran. You get to go first.
So I'm going to go with a player that we just talked about with Tony.
Okay.
And it seems like he's not as high on this guy as I am, and that's Michigan linebacker Devon Bush. And Bush, I mean, he's a guy. I know Mack Wilson. Mack Wilson is pretty much a freak show in terms of his athleticism. But Devon Bush is no slouch. I mean, this guy, in terms of the straight line stuff, I mean, I would expect that he's going to test well in the 40. I would expect that he's going to jump well. The linear stuff, I'm really, really excited about Devon Bush. Now, the shuttles, that might be a little bit of a different story. We'll see that come to fruition there. What's that, Sunday in terms of drills at the Combine? But I think Devon Bush is one. Number one, I'm excited to see it because I think he's going to be really good in some areas. But number two, it's going to be big for his draft stock. If those shuttles can be, even if they're serviceable, if they're not really, really bad, I think that will do a lot for his draft stock.
All right, my first player, we've talked about some of the big receivers earlier in the show with Nikhil Harry and the insight that Tony Pauline was able to provide. Well, we're talking about freak shows. How about DK Metcalf from Ole Miss? And, we saw the highlights on the field before he suffered that scary neck injury. Apparently, he's been fully cleared. He's going to be participating in the drills at the Combine. But after that ridiculous photo that went viral about, I think we were talking about in last week's episode of the podcast, how is he going to test? Okay. Yeah. Obviously you he can win those jump ball situations, those contested catch plays, and he's able to stretch the field. But, does he have a little wiggle to him? How's he going to do in those shuttle drills, the 3-cone drills? So I'm excited to see him physically up close and personal, but also how does he maneuver in some of those drills?
Yeah, I think that's a good one to point out. A lot of the ways, kind of similar to Devon Bush, except for the receiver position. I think a lot of the straight line stuff with Metcalf is going to be aces. I mean, 40-yard dash, the jumps, he should be excellent. Now I want to see what those shuttle times look like for Metcalf. My next one is going to be Montez Sweat, the pass rusher from Mississippi State. I would put Cleveland Farrell in this bucket as well. I think that there's a lot of these defensive ends where we want to try and get a sense of how athletic are you, because you watch both those guys really on film, and it's like, all right, big-bodied kids. They both use their hands well. You could tell they're coached well. They have a plan of attack against offensive linemen. But are they really top-end explosive? Do they really have that ability to win with their first step? Are they freak shows turning the corner with flexibility? With both those guys, I'm not quite sure. So I think with both guys, you want to see, all right, how are they going to test? I think that will answer some people's questions, or it'll just bring up more questions.
I was surprised you put him down only because you got to see him up close and personal at the Senior Bowl. So
I think with athletic testing, you could start start painting pictures. You know, and
Certainly.
that's something we talked about over on the Eagle Eye in the Sky podcast with Josh Norris. That episode that he was on a couple weeks ago. And Josh says if it were up to him, he would wait until the combine is over for him to start watching guys. I don't know if I am all the way on that realm of it, but I think that can help start to paint some pictures for some of these players.
It's for teams that have certain measurables that they have to have.
Right.
It's like if he doesn't come in at a certain height, weight, speed, and certain position drills,
Yep.
you just kind of eliminate them and don't bother wasting your time watching them because you don't want those exceptions all over your roster. So my second player here, we talked a little bit about him with Tony. I actually vividly recall we were on the flight back from Mobile, speaking of the Senior Bowl, and you're watching tape, you were watching, I think, Tony Pollard from Memphis, who we saw at the Senior Bowl, but you watched Devon White, the LSU linebacker, and you got all giddy as you're like holding
reaching across the aisle, waking C-Mac up.
Yeah, to show me. And you just go on Twitter and you look at the highlights of him flying to the ball. Absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah.
And I can't wait to see that up close in person at the turf at Lucas Oil Stadium. So obviously I think Tony made a great case as to why he probably won't go in the top 10 picks this year, but maybe that'll change after his athletic testing in Indianapolis. But he's someone who I'm excited to see out there in Indy. I know Eagles fans are probably like, I want guys who are going to probably be there at 25, have a chance to be there at 25, and I know that's not going to be the case with White, but still, you want to see some of these freak show athletes perform in Indy.
Well, I'll kind of wet the palate for the Eagles fans that are excited about the player because this is a guy that, I know a lot of Eagles fans are excited about. It's a position that a lot of Eagles fans are excited to hear more about. And it's a position, honestly, and this player was very much involved with this. I was torn when I was writing my preview pieces, and I got to the workout warrior section for running backs because Devin Singletary from FAU, I think he's going to test very, very well on film. He's got all kinds of juice. He's very dynamic. But Darrell Henderson from Memphis is really explosive. I think he's probably going to run the best 40 of any of the running backs in attendance. I think when you look at him, there are shades of Dalvin Cook. In terms of his play style, what he can do. I think Cook was probably a little bit better between the tackles. But, man, you look at Henderson, this kid can fly. He's outstanding on those perimeter runs, outside the numbers, those sweep plays that the Eagles love to run. This kid would be awesome on those kinds of plays. So I'm very, very excited to watch Henderson work out. I think he'll probably be one of those guys that we talk about, man, he really helped himself at this event.
It's actually going to be maybe a question I have for you come up later on in the podcast. Right. But my last player here is, speaking of your combine preview pieces, the defensive tackle one, again, just went up a short time ago before we recorded this, and your workout warrior there was Houston's Ed Oliver.
Did you watch that video?
What's that?
Did you watch the video I sent you?
I did not. No, I didn't get a chance to watch that.
Oh, man.
No, I did. No, there was a workout drill. Yes, the
of him,
drills. Yes.
It's like him running defensive back drills at 280 pounds.
Yes.
And I remember watching that back in the summer and thinking, what, this guy is an alien. The way that he moves is ridiculous.
For a guy, you have to put in context for his size. That's the thing. The man that size to be as fluid and as agile as is absolutely ridiculous.
Absolutely.
It's funny you mentioned the struggle you have with selecting a workout warrior when you have two, or any of these titles when you have two closely knit ones. You'll have your list of other people I expect to test well. It's like you don't want to leave one of your kids out.
No, I can't.
I love these 5 other players, and it's well,
especially at that position, at defensive tackle, because there are 6 guys, and I'm like, all these guys are going to test really, really well. That was one of them for sure.
Yeah, I could tell. I could tell when I'm editing these pieces how torn you get over them. So those are our pick 6 players we're most excited to see work out in Indianapolis. Up next, we bring back On the Clock.
On the Clock.
I'm not going to know until I listen to this. Do we actually have a drop?
Oh, yeah, of course. Come on.
I mean, I'm assuming. I wouldn't think we would do this segment unless we had a drop for it, but it's been a while.
Yeah.
On the Clock. So on this lovely piece of paper right here, for those of you who are watching can see it up close, okay?
On YouTube.
Old note. Look, I type in Notepad. I will confess this. I work in Notepad. I don't go and work.
He does work in Notepad.
I work in Notepad, okay, to begin things off. So in Notepad, I started with, kind of had a few extra, will them down, but basically we're going to go through, I think at the end of here, I have 10 scenarios.
Okay.
I'm going to work through. Originally, I was going to just do over-unders, over-under for so-and-so doing the 40, 4.5 seconds, have you take it, I want to have a little bit of fun with this. So it's not all just straight 40 times and things of that nature.
Okay.
some things I had to trim that I thought maybe were a little too.
This takes
risque.
us back to episode 1, episode 2
Oh,
of Journey to the Draft.
yeah, of course.
All
All
right.
right. So we've talked about Kyler Murray quite a bit the last few weeks.
Yes.
Okay. So it's a 2-part question here for number 1.
Okay.
Going to give you over/under for height and weight.
Ooh.
Okay. Do you need another piece of paper to?
No, I'm good.
Okay. Over/under for the height, 5'9" 3/4 inches.
I'm going to take the. I'm going to take the under.
Because they're making it sound like
No, I'm
he's
gonna take
not
the
gonna be.
under.
He's not going to be 5'10", but he
take,
could.
I'm going to
yeah.
take under 5.096.
Okay. You're taking under.
Yep.
Over/under on height, weight. Or I'm sorry, on the weight. We obviously did the height. 202 pounds.
Right. So you're going off the report from his agent.
Yes.
Yeah. So his agent, Eric Burkhardt, came out and said that he was over 200.
I
Well, he was-
thought I actually read he was going to be 205. Is what
See,
I read.
I'm taking the under.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, you said 202, right?
Yeah, 202.
I'm taking the under.
Nope.
The only way I see him coming in and over that is if he decides that he's not going to work out.
Gotcha.
But maybe I'm wrong. We'll
All
see.
right. So, Kyler Murray over
Under
for
and under,
height and weight. All right. Up next, we're going 40 times here.
Okay.
Back in 2003,
Ooh, okay.
Arizona State guard Regis Crawford set a mark you don't want attached to your name. The slowest in recent memory of 6.07 seconds. So slowest since 2003.
Yeah.
Even worse than what did
Orlando
De'Runnya Wilson?
Dejagi
Wilson
Wilson.
come in?
Yeah, he was like 5 flat, wasn't he?
It was up there. Any threat of that mark being broken?
No.
Okay.
I think the guys this year in this day and age, we're past that point.
Okay.
Because even like Orlando Brown last year was really
He was
bad. but
5'8". He was like
yeah,
5'8". I
right.
did look up Orlando Brown to look for comparison. So 6.07. That'll be
touching
safe. Will the top 40 time this year be set by an offensive or a defensive player?
The only guy I think has a chance on the defensive side, in terms of the guys that I'm aware of, because
Okay.
there are a bunch of corners that I haven't studied yet, is Jamal Dean, the corner from Auburn.
Okay.
But I'm going to say it's offense. I think it'll be offense. It'll take it home.
Interesting because just going on last year, only 3 of the top 11 times were by offensive players.
Okay.
Offhand, could you name any of them? So
John Ross. Oh,
That's
this
2
is
years
last year.
This is
Yeah,
last year,
year.
2018.
Um,
So top 11 times.
top 11 times last
3
year.
were offensive players.
Yeah. DJ Chark.
That is correct. Ding, ding, ding.
Oof. Yeah, I'm gonna, for the sake of good podcasting.
Yeah,
I'll
let you-
take. I'll
So Naheem Hines
Naheem
and
Hines,
Marquez Valdez-Scantling.
Ah, that's right.
Okay. The second best time last year's combine 40 time was 4.34 seconds.
4.34. Okay.
Okay. Do you think the fastest time this year will be better or worse? The best time
Let's make it
last
exciting.
year-
I'm going to say that the best time will be better than 4.34.
4.34. Okay. The best time a year ago was 4.32. Dante Jackson, Denzel Ward were
LSU.
among the
Yeah.
players
Okay.
who tied for that. All right. Let's go to vertical jump for a moment here. Okay. Will a prospect surpass 42.0 inches in the
Yes.
vertical jump?
Yep.
Okay. Last year, Terrell Edmonds and Mike Gesicki had 41.5 to lead
Okay.
all players. Chris Conley back in 2015, wide receiver out of Georgia, had a 45-inch
Yep.
vertical. Best one of recent history. So you will go over 42 inches.
Yeah, I'm going to go Paris Campbell.
Okay.
I'm going to go DK Metcalf.
Okay.
Hakeem Butler.
So you think it's easily done.
Yeah, I think a few of those guys are going to challenge it.
Gotcha. Speaking of Mike Gesicki, true or false? There will be a freak show performance out of a Penn State player. We had Chris Godwin
Yeah.
a couple years ago. We had Saquon,
Yep.
Barkley, and Troy Apke
Troy Apke, yeah.
last season, as well as Gesicki. So will there be one this year? There will. This is actually the question. There will be a freak show performance out of a Penn State player. True or false?
Yeah. I think I'm going to go false. I think I'm going to go false. I think they're going to test better than expected, but I don't know that we're going to walk away saying, like, man, like, Miles Sanders blew the doors off the combine.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so I'm going to say false. I think they will test better than expected because that's kind of how the Penn State players have rolled over the last few years.
Gotcha. Okay. Up next here, this actually ties into your NFL comparison in your defensive tackle combine preview. Okay.
Okay. Who
You
did
had
did Rennell Wren? Yep.
to Chris Jones.
Yes.
And he had a notable combine performance, not for the reasons you would want to have typically.
That's true.
Over under on Chris Jones like wardrobe malfunctions. Doesn't have to just be that, but any type of wardrobe malfunction. I'll set it at 0.5.
I'm going to take the under.
Okay.
For all of our sakes.
Okay. That would be good. Over under is something that happens every season, unfortunately, and it's one of the events I think a lot of people wonder why they still have it. Over under on bench press injuries, 1.5.
I'll take the under.
Yeah.
I do wonder if more people will not do that event. But it seems like I think the players get more juice out of that than anybody else.
Certainly.
Honestly.
So that was your over under there. Okay. 2 more for you here.
Taking a lot of unders.
I know. I do a good job setting this. Next one, fill in the blank. Blank will emerge as the biggest winner of the NFL scouting combine.
Ooh. I'm going to give you one on each side of the ball.
Okay. Wow. Above and beyond here.
I'm going to go Rashawn Gary for defense. On offense, part of me wants to say Darrell Henderson, but I'm going to say Paris Campbell.
Really?
Yeah. I think Campbell's going to test really, really well across the board.
Which is interesting because there have been some mocks that have him going as late as the 6th round. So
the thing with Paris Campbell is that this is his event. Like this is where he's going to shine. He is a guy that he's kind of like in no man's land as a receiver because because of how he was used. I mean, he was a gadget guy for Ohio State, jet sweeps, shallow crosses, screen game. I mean, that was kind of his bread and butter. Not a proven route runner over the middle of the field. Not a guy that can settle into the soft spots and zone coverage. Like that's just not what he was asked to do. So it's a projection. Was not a deep threat, despite his skill set. Was not a proven deep threat. So that's a projection.
Fair enough, yeah.
I think that's so. You're kind of like, all right, well, what are we going to do with a Paris Campbell? That being said, guys with his skill set. I mean, DJ Chark wasn't like a finished product either, and he went early 2nd round.
Yeah.
So I don't think he's going to fall to round 6.
Okay. Last one here. Little fun one here.
Yeah.
Involves 40 times. 3 times, Rich Eisen of NFL Network has crossed the 6-second threshold in the 40, including a 5.97 a year ago. Will this be the 4th year?
And that beats the kid from 2003.
Yes.
That's embarrassing. That's bad.
Wasn't going to bring that back up, but yes.
Is it going to happen this year?
Yeah. Does he break 6 once again this year?
Yeah. You know why? Because I think that he's going to. They're probably going to bring Mike Mayock from his team meetings and have him hold the watch, and he's going to have to show out for his friend.
That'll
I think
be
that's
good.
what it is.
That'll be
They're
good.
going to have to bring Mike back.
That should clip that video, this part of the video alone for when that actually happens. I think that's a good call on your part.
We'll see.
There. So, Fran, it's on the clock.
On the clock.
That's what I got for you. On the clock.
How'd I do?
There. We'll find out.
We'll find out, I guess, in
a couple weeks here. So, transition a little more because fans can't get enough of Fran, so we'll get a little more of him in the unofficial visit with New Mexico State linebacker Terrell Hanks from the Senior Bowl in Mobile, Alabama.
The unofficial visit.
Here now with New Mexico State linebacker Terrell Hanks. And Terrell, for fans who have yet to watch you play, give us a quick scouting report of what you'll bring to the NFL.
Well, first, Fran, people who watching me to play, the first thing they see is a big guy. Somebody that could fly around and hit, be vocal and have a good personality.
Yep. You were a 4-year starter there at New Mexico State. Talk about just how much that experience has helped you get to this point.
Well, that experience helped me a lot because, I was able to adjust really fast. I played as a true freshman. And, once I got into that system with Coach Doug Martin, I knew that, his mentality was to play with a chip on your shoulder, and that's the type of mentality I have.
What's one of the strengths you feel that, maybe fans don't necessarily think about, but it's one of those things that's so important to, being successful at the linebacker position and really being as successful as you are playing that spot?
You know, what people don't understand is when you playing linebacker, it's a tough job, responsibility. You got to be able to run, you got to be able to cover, you got to be able to tackle. You know, for me, you know, by the grace of God, I have all three, so it's been great.
What's of those three roles, what's your favorite of the three? So run, cover, blitz, I mean, all the different things linebackers has to do. What's your favorite thing to accomplish?
I like to hit.
Yeah. I could tell that from practice that you had a couple nice sticks today. What is it about, just kind of laying that hit on a guy? Because I'm not that big. I'm never going to do what you're able to do. What is that like? Let the watcher, the viewers at home.
Just that sound, that click of the pass. You know, you hear that woo. You know, that's that good feeling you got.
From the feedback you've gotten from scouts, what's one area that you have to prove for yourself moving forward the next couple of months?
Be patient. Read my keys better. And as long as I just move forward, I got nothing to worry about. If I mess up, play fast.
Well, Terrell, appreciate the time. Best of luck the rest of this week, and best of luck throughout the next couple of months.
Thank you.
Now it's time to hear from you, the fans.
Coming down the stretch here, it's time for your questions in our draft mailbag. But before we get into them, I have to give a shout-out to Melissa Kelly, behind the glass, doing a phenomenal job producing this week's episode of the Journey to Draft podcast. But let's get into your questions. And the first one, our friend Richard from the Apple Podcast page has left a few comments for us of late. And again, easiest way to get included in the podcast is to rate and leave a comment. Simple enough right there. Is it possible to get one of the Eagles scouts on as a guest just to discuss the evaluation process a little bit and where the board is pre-combine and where it may go post-combine? Any of their insight would be appreciated. Well, Fran, you've beaten him to the punch here.
I have, and I know Richard knows this because he has been listening all throughout the fall. But for those who haven't, if you're just joining the show, if you just joined a few weeks ago, you may say, "Man, that's a really good question, Richard." And guess what? I've got answers for you.
Exactly.
If you go back to episode 135, which was just a couple of weeks ago, this was January 21st. We're down at the Senior Bowl. Pat Stewart, who's a national scout for the Eagles, came on the show. We talked about the scouting process, but mainly the All-Star game, so you can get a sense there. Then you go back to early December, and that was when I had Anthony Patch on. He's the senior director of college scouting for the Eagles, and we talked about what it's like going on the road, just life as an area scout.
Patch is a man.
Patch was great, and he's been with the Eagles for a long, long time.
Yep.
So really gracious for the time that he spent on the show. That's episode 126. So go back December 5th this year. You'll hear that interview. Then if you go back a little bit further, go back to right when we kind of rebooted the show. So back in August, episode number 111. This is August 20th from 2018. Ian Cunningham, the other director of college scouting for the Eagles, who a lot of people think is a rising star in this business. He came on and we talked about the entire draft process in general, from really the spring all the way up through the following spring. So if you really want to get a sense of actually what Richard just asked for, which is just talking about the whole evaluation process, that might be the one for you. But I would encourage you to go back, listen to all three interviews, and really get a sense of what life is like at different levels of the scouting business. I don't know if we're going to get another scout between now and the draft. I think we might, but I don't want to promise anything that I'm not positive on yet. But those three interviews may wet your whistle a little bit.
And you actually caught up with Ian Cunningham at the Senior Bowl.
I did.
So there's a one-on-one video interview. It's not a full-length podcast interview, but still 4 or 5 minutes, with just some great insight into what goes on at the Senior Bowl. So definitely want to check that out as well as your one-on-one interview with Joe Douglas, which takes us through the end of the Senior Bowl to where we're at right now.
Yep.
Just before the Combine. All right. Did this come from Apple Podcasts as well?
No, this one actually came from the wide receiver preview article. Yeah, this is a different spin here.
Wow. Okay. This is a first here, and if I had read the tease, I would have been able to see where it came from.
That's right.
So
that's why I do all that work.
Again, Fran puts together the Combine position preview articles, and in his wide receiver one, Durst commented, "Loving these positional previews. Has a question. Longtime listener of the Journey to Draft podcast. Even though he's not an Eagles fan, probably no fewer than 3 times have you referenced how the NFL has devalued the big receiver, and specifically how guys like Alan Lazard, Auden Tate, and Simi Cobbs were hyped by many as high-level prospects last year, but each fell to the bottom or completely out of the draft." You kind of implied that you were trying to figure out, Fran, but as your research changed your opinion regarding these bigger receivers, if it's all about creating separation, how slow is too slow? Is 3 cone time more important than 40 time? Your thoughts on that?
So I haven't finished my research on it. I'm still putting together my thoughts. I will give you a little bit of a sneak peek, though. Every year, I know one of our favorite podcasts to put together, one of my favorite podcast discussions, and I know a lot of the listeners agree, is the conversation I have with Greg Cosell at the Combine for Eagle Eye in the Sky, because we just kind of pick a topic and we just go. And it's we're a few weeks removed from the NFL season. We've been watching college tape. Let's pick a theme and we'll just go. I have a feeling it's going to be on this topic because it's something that's really been kind of sticking with me over the course of the last few months. And watching these big receivers again this year, I'm starting to kind of feel a lot of the same feelings. And it's like, okay, like Nikhil Harry and, Kelvin Harmon and some of these other guys, they're big. Hakeem Butler, they can go up and they can win, but can they create their own separation? And I think that's something that is going to be an interesting topic to discuss. So keep an eye out for that discussion with Greg Cosell over on the Eagle Eye in the Sky podcast. Not finished my research of it yet. As far as the 3-cone over the 40, I think a lot of people would say that that's the case regardless. That the game, look, 40-yard day. It's not rare. It's not common for people to be running 40 yards play in and play out in the NFL. You're much more likely to be running inside of a 10-yard box like you would in the 3-cone drill. But that being said, it's a very, very interesting topic.
In fact, Roto-World has a series. I haven't had a chance to really delve into it, and I apologize. I don't know who's written the series, but it's basically these are the numbers the testing numbers that really matter for each position.
Interesting.
So I haven't had a chance to really delve into it, but something I might give a look at over the week leading up to the Combine here. On Twitter, from across the pond, at Dennis Doss asks, Fran, could there be a wide receiver out there for the Eagles who's like a Cooper Kupp? He listens all the way from Berlin. So lots of love out there to Berlin. Cousin Abby, who's in Munich with Mark and
nice.
their 2 kids. So much love to them as well.
So, I think regardless of what you're looking for at wide receiver, I think that there are options. If you're looking for that big-bodied guy to make plays outside the numbers, they're there. If you're looking for a big-bodied guy in the slot, they're there. The speedsters, the undersized slot guys, the possession receiver, they're all in this draft. The amount of juniors that declared, I think, really kind of supplemented the depth, and now you've got options really with whatever you're looking for. In terms of somebody who's like a Cooper Kupp, I think, you look at guys like Pharaoh Cooper. I'm thinking of Pharaoh Cooper because he was number 1 in that draft. Number 2, his predecessor, Deebo Samuel, who in ways is kind of like Pharaoh Cooper. Deebo Samuel is a guy that I really, really like. I don't think he's a pure speed guy, not like Deshaun Jackson, Tyreek Hill, kind of like, take the top off, play in, play out, but certainly has the speed to work vertically, can work in the middle of the field. He's really tough. He's great after the catch. I'm a big fan of Deebo Samuel. In terms of another guy who reminds me, there was a guy that I remember Ben Fennell was in the office last week and we were talking, and there was someone that he said, it kind of reminds me of Cooper Kupp, and I can't remember the name of the receiver off the top of my head and who we were talking about. But there are a lot, like I said, go back to it. There are a lot of receivers in this draft that can kind of cater to whatever need you're looking for. We'll talk about it more so next week when we do our daily recap of the skill guys that Saturday.
Indeed. A couple more here we'll get through real quick. At P. Edgar KSU wants to know, does the lack of touches for Josh Jacobs concern you?
No, it doesn't. I think that's why you get a lot of the comparisons to Alvin Kamara, because Kamara was kind of the same kind of deal. He was more of the backup throughout his college career, and obviously has gone on to NFL stardom. I don't think that scares as many people away. In fact, with the fact that he's got more tread on his tires, I think has more people excited about Josh Jacobs. You study the traits, and when you look at the traits with Jacobs, there's a lot to like. I mean, the kid, he's a big kid. He's athletic. He's a finisher. He can make the first man miss. He's gotten better as a blocker. He's a really, really impressive receiver. Can be used in a lot of different ways in the passing game from that respect. There's a lot to like there with that kid. And he played core special teams. It did a lot for them. So I think when you look at Josh Jacobs, certainly you're expecting that his best football is ahead of him, and he can be a feature back, even though he wasn't that guy for the most part at Alabama.
Great questions, and there's some more we won't be able to get to today. We'll save them for the positional recap podcast next week, which, again, a week from now, will be in beautiful. I'm sure it's sunny. I'm sure it's glorious. Indianapolis.
You think so?
I bet it is.
Sunny and 17.
17. I was going to say the only time I was ever colder in my life,
Super Bowl.
Yeah,
Sure.
That's really the only other time. Yeah. So, again, thank you very much, everyone, for listening out there to the Journey to Draft podcast. Again, rate, comment, review wherever you listen to podcasts, and definitely subscribe because when we're in Indianapolis, we're going to be doing daily podcasts, previewing and recapping the 2019 NFL Scouting Combine. Fran, any final words?
At Sticks5212, Terry McLaurin, very interesting possession type receiver, great route runner, had a great week of practice at the Senior Bowl. I told him I would get him on the podcast. Want to make sure he snuck it in there.
Oh, my bad. So
all right.
You should have put it at the top then.
We got to give love to the people that go on Apple Podcasts.
That's true. So
I snuck it in there. So Russo, I got you.
My apologies. So if it was starred here,
I know.
That's fine. So until next time, for Fran Duffy, I'm Chris McPherson. You've been listening to Journey to Draft podcast. We will see you from Indianapolis next week.